from Anti-Fragile Physical Therapy. I wanted to take some time to talk to you today about squat mobility. With the squat, back squat, front squat, any kind of squat that we're doing in the gym, out of the gym, there are a lot of things that can happen that can affect your mobility from your back, your hips, your knees, all the way down to your ankles. I see often something that's really overlooked though is the ankle mobility and how that plays into our squats. So most commonly I would say people with mobility limitations might present with a squat that looks more like this. Now there's a lot of different reasons, like I said, that your squat can look a little bit different. Everybody's body is different. Our bone lengths are different, from the length of our femur, length of our tibia, relation of the size of your torso to the size of your leg. So squats are gonna look different from one person to another. But when I see this common fault of someone reaching really far back with their hips and their shins are not translating forward, their knees are not going towards their toes, it could either be because they're scared to let their knees go towards their toes, which could be a whole nother video, or they're lacking mobility here in their ankle joint that lets that shin actually slide forward and give us the space that we need in that joint to drop pretty low down into the squat. So we're gonna break out a couple different things today to examine the different faults and the different ways that you can test them, work on them, and then retest them with your squat. Start with a really narrow squat. So this is gonna affect your balance, but you're gonna really be able to single out what your ankles are doing. You can't hide from your lack of ankle mobility when your feet are really narrow like you can when they're wide. So feet really close together, touching there, and try to squat all the way down as low as you can go. And you can see that my knees track pretty far forward of my toes. I have good ankle mobility here to allow me to do this. And when I come back up, everything's okay. Now, if my ankles were stiff, I might have trouble letting my knees drift forward. So as I squat down, I can't really do very much and I have to sit pretty far back, or I lose my toes and I lose my balance and have to step backwards. If you find that you have some limitations that way, that you can't go very deep in that really narrow squat, you can add something under your heels. These are 5-pound weight plates. They're about 1 inch tall. You could use a book, a 2x4, something like that. The higher that height is gonna be, the more it's gonna assist you to get lower in the squat. So you wanna try to find something that's 1 to 2 inches. You put your heels on there. Again, feet pretty close together, as close as you can with whatever surface you're on, and then try to squat again for me. So for me, it already feels a little bit easier to be able to squat deeper here, because when we raise our heels up, it puts us at a little bit of a negative as far as the mobility here at the ankle. So we start off higher, we start off a little bit plantar flexed, and then when we squat down, we have a little extra room to go. So if this feels a lot easier to you than the other squat, then it tells me that there probably are some limitations coming from your ankles that we should work on. So after we test that out, we can come over to a wall. I'm gonna use a box here for the sake of the video. We're gonna get into a mini lunge position with your foot going towards the wall in a straight line. My back foot's in a straight line like I'm in a lunge. And then I'm gonna keep my heel down on the ground and shift my knee forward to try to tap that box or to tap the wall. If that feels easy, then I'm gonna slide my foot back, away, keeping my heel down, still tapping forward, and try to go as far back as I can away from that box to continue to try to tap my knee. If I get to a point where I try to tap forward and my heel comes up, that's when the test is over. So I go as far back as I can, my heel's down, my knee can touch. The goal would be to go until you're about a hand width away from the box or the wall. And that means that you have good mobility for your body size to be able to squat low. If I see that someone only has a couple inches before their heel wants to come up, then I know that there's definitely some limitations in their ankle dorsiflexion that we need to work on to help make that squat a little bit easier for them. So for the dorsiflexion, where we did the box tapping with the knee, to try to work on that, you can have your foot up on a surface. It can be a bench, a box, anything that's raised. Your foot is gonna be flat on that surface, and you're gonna take some time to drive your knee straight forward, then towards the outside. And so now with that one, I'm working on keeping my foot flat. So my big toe stays down on the surface that I'm on. I'm not rolling my foot out like that, and trying to drive my knee out to the side. And then we can try driving in. Again, keeping my foot flat. So here I would focus on keeping the outside of my foot down and pushing in and trying to see what feels tight, what feels limited. What I'll often ask people is just what feels familiar. So if this reproduces some of your symptoms that you feel when you're squatting or some of that tightness that you feel, so we want to spend a little more time going into this direction. We also want to look at the rotation of your tibias. So when you're squatting, we're talking about this bend here, but this tibia bone right here also has to rotate different directions to allow us that kind of movement through the ankles and the knees. So to look at that, you can sit down. Feet can be flat on the floor, or you can have just your heels down. We want to try to turn, knees stay where they are, try to turn your feet and your shin bones. You can look at this little knobby part here, out to the side, and then back in. We want to see about 40 degrees in each direction, but you can also just compare side to side. If you have a knee, an ankle, a side that's a little bit painful, you can kind of pay attention to that symptomatic side and compare it to the non-symptomatic side, which is what we often do in the clinic. So I'm looking how far can my shin bone, including my foot and my ankle, turn in to internal rotation, and how far can it turn out? If I found that this side only goes out a tiny bit compared to this side, then that's something that I want to work on. Same if it only comes in a little bit, because that's going to limit how my ankle folds down when I'm in that squat. Now we can work on getting that tibia to turn in and out. So for that one, I like to hold right on top of my foot. So we have the knobby ankle bones here. I'm coming right underneath there with the palm of my hand on my foot, holding here. And then I'm going to work on driving my leg, my knee out, and then in, and out, and in. So I'm using my hip muscles to do this. You can also push a little bit with your hand. Pushing out, getting a little stretch in my ankle. I can push in, keeping my foot flat on the bench as I go in and out. And again, 10 to 15 repetitions until you start to feel like things really loosen up. And then you can retest it with a squat or with the exercise that we did over here in front of the bench, where you can see just how far your foot can go back without your heel coming up off the ground. All right, so we've done a lot of mobility work to work on the ankles with our tibial rotation in either direction, and then our dorsiflexion to help us get into a deeper squat more comfortably. But after all the mobility work, if we don't do the exercises to help our tissues, our muscles, the tendons, and the ligaments actually get used to that mobility, as well as our balance and some other things that generally go unnoticed when we're talking about weightlifting, then it's not going to carry over to the functions that we want it to. So in order to do that, we want to spend some time under tension after we've done the mobility drills to help everything stick. So with that, you can grab a light weight, something reasonable. We're gonna do a tempo squat all the way down to that full depth that feels comfortable, and then come back up out of it. We can do it with or without the lifts underneath the feet, depending on how your mobility is. If you feel like you're still very stiff, you can add those plates back under your heels to do a squat here, and still spend some time getting used to that really deep depth. So what we're gonna do, holding your weight, you're gonna take 10 seconds to descend all the way down to the bottom of the squat. Once you're there, you're gonna hold it, starting for 10 seconds with good use of your muscles. We're not just sagging down into a squat and using our joints to hold us there, but starting for 10 seconds, then over time you can progress to 20. Doing about 5 to 10 reps of that, just again to spend some time under tension, get used to that, and that's a really good warm up before you actually go to the barbell and try to do some things with your working sets. So from here, just 10 seconds. All the way down. And you're feeling all those muscles working. You're letting your glutes work. You feel it in your ankles and your knees, all that's fine, but you're trying to hold it for about 10 seconds here. Getting used to the balance of that movement. And then coming up out of it. The longer time you spend at that depth, the more comfortable that's gonna be for your body, and the less maximal that's gonna feel as far as your effort goes and your range of motion goes. So that's how we can continue to progressively load you down into those deeper depths. Then we can kick out the weights or the plates, whatever you're using under your feet, and do the same thing there. And you can start to unlock a little more motion every time, and holding it there for upwards of 15, 20 seconds. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. We will continue to come out with some more videos to try to work on squat mobility, deadlift mobility, and other things that we can do some breakout sessions on. So please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.